This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with erstwhile Poets Laureate Rich Michelson and Martina Espada. Rich Michelson, the microphone is yours.
Well, thank you, Bill, and welcome again, Martine. You continue to hold the record for the most times on this show, and we're thrilled to have you back. And we want to let everyone know that tomorrow night, February 24th, Martine will be reading at the Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley, but you can tune in over Zoom everywhere in the country. So go to the Odyssey site, Odyssey Bookshop, South Hadley, Mass., and you'll find a link to that reading tomorrow night. And Martine will be in conversation with Paul Mariani. So we're going to have a chance to chat with Paul a little bit later today. So for those of you who don't know, and I believe everyone should by now, Martine is not every prize the nation has to offer: the Ruth Lilly Prize, the Shelley Memorial Prize, the Guggenheim Fellowship. It was about his disciple was banned in Tucson. That always gets a nice hand. He's the editor most recently of What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump. And we are here to celebrate his brand new book, Floaters. I still hold this up in front of the mic for some reason, even though it's radio. It is an amazing book, Martine. I think it's amazing to me that you just keep getting better and better. And I think this book is an incredible achievement. I'd like to start out tonight, or this morning, with a poem, if we can dive right into it. I think that because you're so well known for your political poetry and for being a champion of that, the last couple of times we've had you on the show, we have read poems about the Trump era, which is thankfully over. But I think sometimes people miss that you are also an amazing poet of empathy, friendship, love. So I want to focus on that for a little bit right now, if we can. So can you lead us off with a poem?
Thank you very much, Rich, and I'm very glad to be back. I'm very glad to set another record at Northampton Public Radio. As you say, I am reading tomorrow night virtually, as hosted by the Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley, Massachusetts. And my conversation partner following the reading will be Paul Mariani, poet, biographer of poets, and dear friend. So this is a poem for Paul. I want to point out that it's a poem that addresses, as you point out, friendship, empathy, but also mortality, his and mine. We almost lost Paul a few years ago. He made a miraculous comeback. He wrote a poem about it himself, and then I used his poem as the basis for my poem, taking the last line of his poem as the first line from my own. Be there when they swarm me, for Paul Mariani. You were once the boy of the big shoulders, hauling cartons of Campbell's soup at the AMP in 1959, yearning to bring the boss with a wrench. You were the poet of the great handshake and all the stories, squeezing my arm to tell me about Hart Crane, who leapt from a ship to drown at sea. Did he struggle to regain the surface, suddenly sobered by what he'd done? I wandered lonely as a Puerto Rican in an English department, and you found me in the hallway, calling me brother as my own brother never would, calling me poet as if that word had never drowned at sea. Once I was a boy with big shoulders too, plotting to shrink-wrap the foreman's head the night of the layoffs. Not for you, the poet learning to smoke like a poet, bursting into tears at the sight of a mayonnaise jar because he loves the letter M, locking himself in the bathroom because his haiku is too short. Now, you tell tales of the hospital bed, your spine a wreck, your wobbling brain. Now you write of scrubbing the deck when hornets sting and zoom into your eyes as one winged fiend multiplies by 20, and you win, but no, you cannot win, and so you pray, be there when they swarm me. I wear a leg brace up to the knee. The surgeons open my belly like curious children inspecting the pendulum of grandfather clock. My insurance will not pay for my hearing aids. At the airport, they stop me because my beard is a suspect. And yet, I will be there when they swarm you. I will arm myself against the hornets with natural insecticides, the eucalyptus oil, the citronella, the spray of chrysanthemum flower tea, and then the baseball bat. Since I was born in Brooklyn, where people used baseball bats to smash burglars, cars, television screens, anything but baseballs. We will win, though we know we cannot win. You called me brother in the hallway as my brother never would, spoke the word poet like a benediction, and so we wait together for the next wave of winged demons. Be there when they swarm me.
That was Martin Espada reading from his new book, Floaters. Martin will be reading tomorrow at the Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley, but you can join him from anywhere in the country. He will be in conversation with Paul Mariani. And Paul, are you still with us, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear you. So a couple things. First of all, I want to let our audience know, if they don't, just as Martin's political poems have somehow, got more play than some of his other poems of empathy. Paul Mariani is this country's preeminent biographer of poets like Hart Crane, Robert Lowell, John Berryman, Gerard Manley Hopkins, and Wallace Stevens. And somehow that sometimes overwhelms your recognition as a poet. And I want to make sure that people know you are one of this country's premier poets. You have a new book out called Ordinary Time. And it's a wonderful book. We're going to have you back on this show to talk about that book, which is also new. The first time you heard this poem, Paul, where were you? What did you think?
About the poem that Martin just read?
Yeah, did you know he was working on it?
I did not. First of all, I did not know he was going to do this. And so I want to thank you, Martin. I love the poem and I love you, man. It's going to be great to be with you tomorrow again. The more I read Martin's work, I'm just drawn in. I find myself reading more about the Puerto Rican poets, about the Puerto Rican tradition, which I did not know, and which Martin has made me aware of. When I think of Martin, I think of Whitman, but there are so many Latin American poets as well. But then there are also another poet from Detroit, Bill Levine, he reminds me of in many ways. Then there's the love poetry, which to Lauren, which I find so moving and so real. And then the sense of historic fatalism that I keep finding in Martin's work as he goes over the history of it all. The Sacco and Vanzetti, for example. In poems, I now pronounce you dead. I mean, just that line just says so much.
So this gives you all a good sense. We're going to have an incredible conversation tomorrow night between these two major poets. And for me, it's especially wonderful to be talking with you both here. Martin and I grew up in the same neighborhood in East New York, Brooklyn, and I also had a baseball bat under my bed. But when I moved here in 1979, one of the first poets that I met was Paul Mariani. And just as you welcomed Martine to the English department, you welcomed me to this area. You were one of the first poets to take my work seriously. You made me feel like I was a poet. And I want to thank you publicly for that, because I think you've meant a lot to so many people here. So we appreciate that. Tomorrow night at the Odyssey Bookshop, you will hear Martine and Paul in conversation. Martine will be reading from his new book, Floaters. You can order signed copies, so everybody should do that. This is your chance, because it's a local bookstore to Martine. This is your chance to get your books personalized to send. It's a great opportunity. The Odyssey has been doing has been supportive of poets in this area for as long as I've been here. And Joan Kinnear runs a wonderful bookshop, so please take advantage. This is your chance. Martine, let's get back to love. You are married to another incredible poet, Lauren Schmidt. You've written about her. This book is filled with poems to Lauren and inspired by Lauren as well. Let's talk about love and love poem and what being married to a poet has meant to you.
Well, when it comes to this book, she's on every page. And that has everything to do with love. More than one revolutionary has said that the revolution, whatever it may be, is motivated by feelings of love. I think times of hate call for poems of love. And that's a lesson I learned from Puerto Rican poets that Paul Mariani mentioned, from Julia de Burgos to Jack Agüeros, who not only wrote very political poems, but wrote love poems as well. Jack wrote love sonnets, as a matter of fact, and I want to read you one of those. This is actually the poem I read at my wedding ceremony. Lauren and I were married in our living room by a justice of the peace, June 13, 2019, and we had two witnesses to that ceremony, Paul and Eileen Mariani. So this is the poem I read at the ceremony. It's called Love is a Luminous Insect at the Window, for Lauren Maria Espada, June 13th, 2019. The word love, there it is again, indestructible as an insect, fly faster than the swatter, mosquito darting through the net. How the word love chirps in every song, crickets keeping a city boy up all night. I wish I could fry and eat them. How the word love buzzes in sonnet after sonnet. I am the beekeeper who wakes from a nightmare of beehives. To quote Duran, the Panamanian brawler who waved a glove and walked away in the middle of a fight, no más, no more. Then I see you, watching the violinist, his eyes shut, the Russian composer's concerto in his head, white horsehair fraying on the bow, and your face is bright with tears. And there it is again, the word love, not a fly or a mosquito, not a cricket or a bee, but the Luna moth we saw one night, luminous green wings knocking at the screen on the window as if to say, I have a week to live, let me in. And I do.
You're listening to Northampton Poetry Radio. This is Rich Michelson on the Bill Newman Show. Tomorrow night, a reading and conversation with Martine Espada and Paul Mariani, a chance to get books, to get Martine's book signed, and Ordinary Time, the new book by Paul Mariani also will be available. So please tune in. We will be back after a break with Victoria Chang, who will be talking about her latest book, Obit. It's a great week for poetry here in the Valley, and we will continue to talk soon.
This is Bill Newman, WHMP.